Listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andres Restart, and this time we're talking about the potential launch window lineup for the rumored Nintendo Switch 2 that supposedly is coming out in the second half of 2024. Now, this is going to be another one of my vacation videos. I am away right now, but I've recorded several videos to come out while I'm gone, and there will be this one. The editing will be very simple. There'll just be gameplay for some game I'm playing in the background, and I'm just going to talk about this topic, which I think is very interesting. So sit back, relax, and hear me out. Now, before we get started, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. With your help, it can happen. So before discussing the kind of games I sort of anticipate to come out for this launch window of Switch 2, let's talk about what this launch window would be. So the reports from both Video Games Chronicle and Eurogamer talk about this system coming out in the second half of 2024. So technically, that means it could come out anytime between July and December of 2024. But when is it actually coming out? Because I think when it comes out, that can kind of shape what we should sort of expect to come out in the year of its release. And while there is definitely a history of Nintendo releasing hardware in November, I'm not thinking it's going to be November. I'm thinking that the latest we see Switch 2 come out next year is October. Assuming the rumors are correct, of course, but given the credibility of the sites that are reporting on it, I think there's a really good chance this is going to be true, especially considering the need for Nintendo to move on at some point with how late we are into Switch's cycle and the trajectory of Switch sales. While still good, trending down for 3 years in a row is definitely a sign to get ready to move on. And October, I think, could be pretty good because I anticipate that for sure we're at least getting a 3D Mario game to launch the new system. That is what's rumored, that is what makes sense. We haven't had a brand new 3D Mario since Super Mario Odyssey in 2017, which Nintendo used as the big holiday title for Switch in its first year. And given that Nintendo has recently released Tears of the Kingdom, their other go-to for launching big systems, well, that's not really an option right now. So 3D Mario seems like the most likely candidate to be the launch title of Switch 2. And October is a good month for Mario games to come out. Mario Wonder is coming out this October, Mario Odyssey came out in October of 2017, Luigi's Mansion 3 came out October of 2019. And what I've noticed over these last few years is that Nintendo has sort of positioned things where the big sort of Nintendo release, oftentimes something Mario related, comes out the month before November. And not every year, like this year, there isn't a mainline Pokemon release, but a lot of years there is a mainline Pokemon release in November. And when you consider the history of the mainline Pokemon releases, all the games made by Game Freak, whenever a next generation system comes out for the handheld line, because that's what they've been on over all this time, the mainline games don't transition over immediately. They wait about a year or two. But there still will be a mainline release available for the prior system. Of course, with backwards compatibility, that game will still be a hot commodity on the new system, and it may even run a little bit better as well because it is a more powerful system. So the point I'm getting at here is that I think it's very likely that at the very least, what we're looking at for the holiday of 2024, the launch window of Switch 2, is a 3D Mario game. And while I'm expecting that to be an exclusive to Switch 2, I do think the Pokemon game that would be coming out in November of 2024 will still be for Switch, but of course with backwards compatibility, which is also something I'm assuming will be there. The existence of Pokemon itself does make me feel pretty confident about this, never mind all the other things we discussed in the past. That will be a big release right afterwards, and may even run better, who knows, maybe they have some sort of graphics patch so this game runs and looks better on the Switch too. And that could be the big lineup. A 1-2 punch. Mario and then Pokemon, but with a nice little patch to enhance it for Switch 2. But I'm expecting a bit more than that. And obviously launch window, there's some wiggle room there. What do we define as launch window? Is it every game that comes out before its first holiday? Or is it everything that comes out in the first year? For the sake of this video, we're going to be talking about what comes out within the first few months. So let's say for the holiday, but we will talk on some things that can come soon after. But I started with talking about Mario and Pokemon because those are definitely the essentials. However, I do think that there's a scenario where Switch 2 comes out sooner than October. That's why I said at the latest, because I think the Mario game has to come up before the Pokemon game, so October is that likely time period, but it could also happen beforehand. July is even a possibility. I'm not going to assume July, but it's possible. What I'm thinking is that the system comes out in September, just a little bit earlier. And maybe Nintendo surprises me and it comes out even earlier than that, but let's just stick to this for now. My reasoning for this is we usually see major system announcements in July. I do think this Switch 2 might be announced beforehand, but maybe they have a bigger showcase for it in July, 2 months before its release, kind of like how we had this major Switch presentation in January of 2017 and the Switch launch with Breath of the Wild in March of 2017. So by coming out in September, which is still fairly late into the year, but not extremely late into the year, it gives us just a little bit more room to have games release in this launch window before the holiday. And there's one more game that I've been thinking kind of fits pretty well. That's Metroid Prime 4. Now, there's been talk that maybe Metroid Prime 4 comes out in the first half of the year. And if that happens, great, I'd love that. And maybe this upcoming rumor in September Nintendo Direct will showcase Prime 4 and give us an announcement before the second half of the year. But given how long Metroid Prime 4 has been in development, given how many high-tier AAA talents Nintendo has hired to work with Retro Studios to make Metroid Prime 4, given that they restarted development and made that announcement the same way they made the announcement delays for Breath of the Wild, and that Nintendo promised that this game would match up to the pedigree of the Metroid Prime series, I believe Nintendo has a high expectation for Prime 4, at least from a quality perspective, but I also think they want to give this game its best chance to succeed, and also with how impressive the technology is likely to be. Retro Studios has done some special things with Prime Remaster in the history of the Prime series, and what we've heard with rumors of how big and open it seems and how it looks visually unbelievable. I think this is going to be a significant game, and it's definitely giving me the cross-gen vibes. Been in development throughout the entire lifetime of the Switch. It's coming out right near the end before you transition to the next big system. I think Prime 4 is a decent bet to be coming out after Switch 2 releases. So what you may be noticing here is that I said Prime 4 would be a cross-gen title. I still think it will come out for Switch. It was initially promised for Switch. It's still listed for Switch. It will be a Switch game. There's tons of people out there who own a Switch who would love to play Metroid Prime 4, who may not be buying a Switch 2 for some time. And you also may have noticed that I talked about the Pokemon game that would still be coming out for Switch. I think Switch is still going to be relevant for a few years, just for those who aren't on the Switch 2 train and plan on getting it immediately, so don't worry. Given how Nintendo handled the 3DS to Switch transition, there will likely be some decent support for a little while. But Prime 4, I see as a very good launch window title. Not launch day like Breath of the Wild was, but also coming out on the Wii U, but launch window. I think if Nintendo launches Switch 2 in September with a 3D Mario game, there'll be some maybe other smaller side things as well. October feels like a good month for a Metroid game. We've seen that happen before. And then Pokemon November, that's a really strong killer lineup going into the holidays. And while this may be total speculation, there is some thinking that maybe Prime 4 could have some significant multiplayer to help the series sell, and if they have such a high budget with such a large amount of resources, they can probably make sure that campaign is still a masterpiece and would meet the expectations for what us Metroid fans would have for a Metroid Prime 4 game, but also maybe implement multiplayer to give the game some legs or an evergreen status so it can help to push sales for a few years to come. And this would work really well given that it would be a launch window title for Switch 2, showcasing the system to some extent. But also simply having multiplayer, I think is important early on into a system's life cycle. Because 3D Mario is going to be, for the most part, a single-player experience. I'm sure they may have some level of co-op in there because they tend to have some level of co-op with most of 3D Mario games, but it's mainly a single-player experience. And then with the Pokemon games, you can play multiplayer, but you need more than one cartridge. It's not like a invite all the friends over or invite the family over and everyone can enjoy the game with just one cartridge. And in truth, given how Nintendo has handled Splatoon, it's possible that even Prime 4, if it has a significant online multiplayer, may still not be the ideal multiplayer family experience. But it may have local multiplayer. I think it probably should, even if it's not like a big deal. I think something like that would be nice to have, but given performance and graphical settings and stuff, that may be a bit of a challenge. Although maybe a nice Switch 2 perk is that it does support local multiplayer with high performance, given that it's a more powerful system compared to the Switch. My ultimate point is that I think the combination of 3D Mario, Metroid Prime 4, and Pokemon would be a nice variety for the launch window. But I do think there's going to be more than that. I think Nintendo likely is going to want to have a couple third parties that are head turners that make you think, whoa, that's on this system? That's amazing. And basically I'm talking about some third party games that would have been nice to have on Switch but just weren't possible. Like Resident Evil 4 Remake, or Elden Ring, for example. So I'm personally hoping it would literally be those as part of the launch window, because I really would like to play Elden Ring or Resident Evil 4 Remake on a pretty powerful portable system like a Switch 2. But there's other possibilities as well. Now, something we tend to see during the launch window for Nintendo systems, with some exceptions, is some sort of exclusive from Ubisoft. And given how the Switch name has really proven itself, I think Ubisoft will be more willing to have some sort of exclusive game ready for Switch 2. And I can't tell you what that would be. Honestly, there are so many possibilities. They've done the Mario Rabbids games, they've done Zombie U, they've done Red Steel. They can go in a lot of different directions, and any of them would be fine. Actually, what I personally would love would be something like Rayman Raving Rabbids. So if you're unfamiliar with this game, this was basically a minigame compilation starring Rayman and the Raving Rabbids. And this was made by Ubisoft. It was a very popular game, a very fun game. If they were to bring something like this back, or just some sort of minigame compilation that's interesting like this, I think this would fit really well to come out early in the system's life cycle, and it would do a great job of really rounding out the 2024 lineup. With that in mind, I'll also say that we tend to always get some sort of similar kind of game from Nintendo every generation. There's 1-2 Switch, there's Nintendo Land, there's Wii Sports. I would like to see something like that for Switch 2 as well. I hope it's more like Nintendo Land or Wii Sports as opposed to 1-2 Switch, but something like that would also be great to have come out in those last few months of the year to really help fill out that holiday lineup for Switch 2. And those are pretty much my expectations for a launch window lineup for Switch 2. But what about 2025 going beyond? I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I have to imagine that the next Mario Kart wouldn't be so far off. I think that would be a major release in 2025. I think Animal Crossing also would be likely for around this time as well. Animal Crossing New Horizons came out in 2020. I think it's been about enough time. They didn't have a lot of consistent support for New Horizons, so I'm thinking they just kind of started to focus on the next game to get that ready, and I could see it coming out relatively early into Switch 2's life. And also, some type of Smash content, I wouldn't be surprised, is also announced in 2025 as well. Maybe a Smash Ultimate Deluxe, maybe a new Fighters Pass, or even just a next Smash game. Something Smash related I think will also be announced in this year. I don't know if it comes out in 2025, but I think it will at least be announced with a chance to release to some extent in 2025 if it is kind of more of a wave-like thing that's going to span some period of time. There's certainly a potential for other games to come out as well, like Kirby is a pretty frequent series. Wave Race would just be a nice little surprise. But in terms of my expectations, I've laid them out. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.